Exposure, nearness, living adjacent to life. It's all one. It's all the same. To see reality just as it is great with a strong level of exposure. Exposure is the capacity for us to let the light of reality into our mind. Why should we see reality more clearly? Why is it important to learn to meet reality? We don't have to accept it, but learn to meet it, because it makes us actually more resourceful. See, it's not reality per se that causes us movement. It's the way that we hold reality. It's the way we attend to reality. If I attend to reality directly, then I'm factually obtaining the intelligence of reality. I'm not in the conjecture or the story frame, or editorial rather. I'm objective, and so I'm able to turn toward reality. But see, as we go through life, this isn't necessarily what our nervous systems prepare us for, is we suppress our ability to directly tune into reality, because reality sometimes is an acquired taste. It hurts. It doesn't come in at a comfortable level. I mean, taking stock or taking inventory of what we really have in relationship to what we want in life, a relationship, a vision, money, just about anything that we want to create. When we take stock of a current goal or we look at the reality as it is, two things happen. One is we may not be standing still enough to be able to see the peripheral vision of reality. So we limit our exposure by the speed, the busyness that we have. We get so caught in being doers that we forget that behind all that is a being that's actually observing, looking, and being aware and taking in the information. And as we see things that are going on, the more that we unblock our receptivity, we let go of judgment. And then as we see things without downloading or clouding our own thoughts over reality, we obtain an actual nearness and exposure, much like the sunlight exposed to our skin. We don't have sunblock on, and we can see from a place of the actual. And it's quite nice to practice this. It means that we choose to teach ourselves reality just as it is. And that as we catch the glimpse of current reality, we take the fluency that we have and not minimize it or exaggerate it or even consider it to be a problem. Rather, it's just an existing condition. And I call this buoyancy. And buoyancy is softening our edges into reality to meet the life that's here. And that we realize that this moment is valid. This is living instead of existing. Living is to participate in the wilderness of life. And that life has a hidden wholeness always in reality. What's the hidden wholeness that's there that we become exposed to? It's how we are meaning-making what we see. We are meaning-making creatures. So what comes to us, we add meaning to it. Meaning is the language of the soul. And then we can consider whether it means something enough to engage what we engage. We contextualize our experiences. And then that context is activating and engaging content. Because not everything is significant because we assign different meanings to different things. But how do we know what has meaning? We experience it. We engage it. We participate. I'm sure there were many instances that didn't mean anything until you had those instances, and now they do. So we realize that what matters to you isn't something that's always the same. What mattered before may be different than now. Maybe more, maybe less. You will change your mind if you're paying attention to your attention. And seeing your own seeing the models that exist in your mind, your expectations, your assumptions, your mental constructs, helps you see in addition to those things or those concepts so that we can gather a greater understanding, a comprehension of what's really going on. Now, that comprehension is, on one level, the intellectual intelligence that we expose our open mind to. And our open mind is exposed by taking away the habituated judgment or perceptions that we carried from the past. We let go of our expectations. We let go of completely filtering everything by thought and learning to think. And in that, we enhance the capacity for a flow for a flow of life to be able to move and to be generative in its own creative order. That we participate in a larger system, a larger hidden wholeness. That hidden wholeness is the generative quality of life itself that reaches to us. How does it reach us? Exposure by the level of awareness that regulates our automatic mind stuff that would normally fall into the habitual pattern of judging something, but if we reduce that to just seeing what has heart and meaning, we are changed by reality, moved by reality, inspired by reality, surprised, astonished, changed. And in that sense, we are truly making meaning by being affected, changed, touched, instead of resisting it. And in doing so, in the pursuit of something that we care about, we make meaning up around what we imagine. We make meaning up around the dream of what we want to create. And that calls upon us to care. We are meaning-making creatures. One of the ways we make meaning is to consider what really matters to us. We all have a mind that has the ability to visualize, to crystallize what is a possible future. We can consider what we want to create. And when we do so, we assign meaning. A generative love is sparked inside of our hearts, because what the creative act is born from is the love for a creation. Music is made out of this. Great art is made out of this. Our lives are the subject matter of the creative process. And in the spirit of the creative act, one of the most important things is to know the current stage of the creations that we're in the process of creating. We have to keenly make ourselves aware of reality and be able to offer ourselves, expose ourselves to reality just as it is. Is it about understanding reality per se and becoming philosophical about it, like the Platonic truth? No. It's about understanding and seeing the current structures and patterns that play out. And some of the reality is going to be favorable, and other qualities in reality are unfavorable. But there's a quality of non-adjacency in reality that we offer ourselves. It gives us a chance to see differences. And when we learn to see, in this sense, it's a little like the Charles Darwin story. When he would go to the Galapagos and take the yellow pad with him, he would write down moments when he would see things freshly. That means that he's using his curiosity and his wonder to see and spot animals, the blue-footed booby or the swimming, let's say, lizard, the iguana. It was different than anything he'd ever seen. And so writing down things that were outside the familiar is a way of seeing without confirming or reconfirming our own thinking habits, our old judgments about what we think or what we expect. Because in our lives, as things move and life delivers itself in the potential of the moment, at best, we live in a very complex kind of system. 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in our lives. Not everything that we expect to go this way will go this way. We're on the road and then we're off the road. And by the time we get along with things, as you walk a path in the desert or you walk a path out in the mountains, what you see is not what you thought you would see. What you see and you encounter is exposure to what the mountain is explaining of itself. We have to not get in the way of that. And we learn how to observe it in its own habitat, in its own way of being. I love scuba diving with the fish and things because I can watch them in their habitat. And if I sit quietly and don't move the water around, they don't sense I'm there. I'm insubstantial like wallpaper, and the fish will move like they're normally in the habitat without my presence influencing their behavior. And so how do we visit our environment? How do we see our environment without imposing our own sort of presence on it? We have to be still. Just like I would in the water, we have to be still with our attention and our awareness. We have to make ourselves, in a sense, insubstantial to expose ourselves to the living qualities that are currently going on. And this is our peripheral vision, our ability to get to something and see, but we have to deepen our ability to see by staying a little longer and listening a little deeper. And by having that level of understanding and reflecting on what is presented to us, we can open up our intellectual intelligence. And that gives us our emotional intelligence. When we see from the heart, we can feel what we see. And we can see where others are in the system. A great leader in politics or a great leader in business will see all the different stakeholders in the spectrum of the industry or in the spectrum of their marketplace and try to understand things by standing in their shoes, putting the jacket over their chair and trying to get it empathetically where they are and how they see the world and what they're most concerned about and what opportunities really move them and what strengths bring them confident and what are the qualities that really make their life-building process have meaning. We have to understand. If you want to see what John Smith buys, you have to look through John Smith's eyes. That's a Harvard business education in 4 years. That's what marketing means, is understanding where others are rather than where we want them to be. And that's our emotional intelligence. And we can gather great intel from that. We can become socially aware. We can become socially managed. We can become self-aware. And we can become self-managed. The emotional intelligence quotient is there to keep our emotions in such a way where we have equanimity. We can see our emotions directly. We can see our emotions through separation. We can stand separate from our emotions and see where we are emotionally. We can stand separate from our concepts of ourselves and see things that we make up to be true. We can see our beliefs and notice that they are just beliefs, but not be of those beliefs. So we practice this principle of stepping back, go to high elevation. And I think of it like a falcon who hovers at the mountaintops and sees things at different elevations, like seeing from a different place in the room. And then you calculate your swoops when you need to zoom in close and then zoom out. Well, we certainly have that equipment, don't we? And when we move way, way out, we can sort of gauge the overall thread in our lives as to what it is that needs to emerge. And this is deepening more of what is alive and potentially offered to us in reality. This is our ontological intelligence, our ability to be in what is and to not be leaving the present moment because we're distracted by the thinking that we have of ourselves. Who am I? Well, dogs aren't preoccupied with who they are. Why are we? But we are. And we're so preoccupied with what we think we are, who we think we are, our self-image, that it organizes a whole bunch of complexity out of what we want to impose on the world. But if we step out of that frame, and we're not in the reference of self, we come back to the moment. And if we're not in the frame of the future and being taken by what the future needs to be and controlling the future, intending it but not controlling it, then we unhook ourselves from the future in what it needs to be and we open up possibilities. The possibilities that stand in need of our attention, that move in co-creation with us, where the emergent future is part of the unfolding vision that we crystallize about who we are and what our purpose here is and what our work is we can blend, we can contextualize into content what we see in ourselves and what knowledge we can gain from the future by stepping into a future possibility and seeing what there is to see. We can learn. And then, of course, we have all this together. We have the intellectual, emotional, ontological, imbalanced intelligence to perceive through these open mind, open heart, open will, these organs of perception, when fear is not in the way, when the voice of cynicism is not in the way, when the voice of judgment is not in the way. What we have is pure access to the now, because we're not caught in the past. And the past is something that we yearn over and trying to prevent it out of fear or trying to rid ourselves of our shame and be adequate and be worthy. We have all sorts of conflicting motivations to somehow find ourselves worthier than our sense of inadequacy. But if we don't make what we see about our identity, if we take our identity out of it, we don't impose who we are on what we have or what we do or what others think, then what's left is we can see reality more clearly and intelligently as it is, and we become resourceful when we're near it, when we're direct to our experience. We're more buoyant. And in doing so, we also access the ability to take away what other people are possibly thinking. We love to anticipate and run with the assumption of others' intentions. Think of times when you've assumed others' intentions and where that's led to. It often leads to conflict. Is you have information that you feed yourself from thought about what you believe the other person is thinking, which you cannot guess, you're not a mind reader, but yet you act as if it's reliable, and then you act on it and feel something from it, and then there's consequences. Oh boy. So can we see these playouts, these consequences that can play out when we are making our thought, which is at best theory, reliable, and it's not. And we don't have the data. We don't have the exposure to the evidence-based realities to base what we conclude on sound data. And a lot of our conclusions in the past that we've made about who we are, what life is, the worldviews that we carry all these mental concepts and constructs, even about time. And I live in a time reality according to my belief about time. If I believe that time is a mental construct of the world to avoid being controlled by it, if I take that belief as true, then I may not need that construct to live in time, but I live in the time that is nature's time, the natural time. Or if I believe I have no time, that there is no time available, despite having 24 hours, but my belief system is that I have no time, then my attention then is not on the available time that I have. Even if I did have it, I wouldn't use it because I'm reconfirming the belief that I don't have any time. The cognitive reflex is getting the best of me. So we don't need to always see the world that we describe. We can describe the world as it is, not as who we are. And that ability to see is the jumping off point into this gathering sensing data from our hearts, gathering unconditional action that brings us into clarity by having explorations of leaping into the future with uncertainty. Because at best, we can't predict the future, we can create the future. And in doing so, creating happens in reality, and we need reality in order for us to have a baseline or a beginning toward that which we seek to create. It's about exposure and nearness to life, and in the realization of our living that we are living in this moment in which it is valid, and we do not need to reduce it to what we expect it to be, because we take away our referencing to the past, and we just simply let it be in the bleachers. We pay less attention to what control we have over the future and create the future, because it's happening right now. We orient ourselves to what really matters to us, and rather than considering how others see us, let them have their own thoughts. Let them be in their own perceptions. Hand the monkey back to them. We can't mind read. No one knows what anybody is really doing or thinking anyway. And we don't need to get into thoughts about who we are and who we're not and who we're supposed to be. That we form a number of ideals out of the negative beliefs we have of ourselves. And when we're not meeting those ideals, we go to a conclusion. We're powerless. We can't create what we want. Or I'm upset, or I'm emotional, or I feel rejected, or I'm less, or I'm inadequate. Most of us, 95% of us, have a belief system of either worthiness or powerlessness. And those two, in some way, create all sorts of undermining complexities. And as we realize, these things are not changeable. We do not need to change those structures. We can just choose fundamentally to be fluent in reality as the predominant creative force in our life, and that we can offer ourselves that ongoing fluency check of teaching ourselves reality, offering ourselves the ability to see it more and more clearly as we go.